I have the schematics for the C right here.
We're back.
Okay. We're back.
Look who's there. It's Guinan.
We're back. Yes. Back to the future. All right. I'm ready to follow your lead, sir.
Welcome to another exciting episode of Starfleet Boy, where we have a casual and informal discussion about Star Trek: The Next Generation. I'm joined by my friend and colleague, the Doctor. Hello, Doctor.
Hello.
Today's episode, one we've been very excited about doing and kind of looking forward to, is yesterday's Enterprise.
Today, let them remember the name.
Let history never forget
the name.
The name. Enterprise. So good. So, episode summary. Routine situation. All of a sudden, a whoosh occurs, and everything's different, and including the uniforms and even the mood of the Enterprise. And the only person who seems to notice is Guinan, and she has interestingly, she has memories of both timelines, but she thinks this one is wrong. There's just something inherently wrong with it, and the reason this happens is because the Enterprise C comes through an anomaly, a rift or a temporal distortion of some kind, and by leaving its place in time and coming to the future, it alters the history of the Enterprise D. And so we see that instead of a mostly peaceful exploration, the Enterprise is the lead flagship in an army and an armed conflict that's been going on with the Klingons for like the past 60 or so years, right? Isn't it a long time, right? Like maybe 40 or 50 years. Anyways, the Enterprise C is pretty damaged, and initially the thought is to integrate the crew into modern times, but then it becomes apparent as Guinan protests that maybe the solution is in fact to send the Enterprise C back to its time, even if it means the destruction of the Enterprise C. And of course, in very heartfelt, touching Starfleet manner, the crew of the Enterprise C agree 100% that if it could change this dismal future in which the Federation is fighting a losing war with the Klingons, that they would be glad to give their lives. One of the side effects of the time change is that Tasha Yar never died. She never died on the mission with what's his name? Anyways, the slimy guy who kills her.
Yeah, not Nagilum.
The oil slick that kills her.
Right, yeah.
And since that never happened, she's been happily serving, during wartime, but she's been serving on board the Enterprise. And Guinan freaks out just the fact that she's there, even though I don't think they ever really met. But
no, they never did.
Yeah. So anyways, it turns out that even Tasha feels something of this and decides that she wants to go back with the crew because, of course, she falls in love with their first officer. So she
Castillo.
Castillo. So she decides to go back. But as they're about to send the Enterprise through the rift back to their time, the Enterprise C back to their time, they become under attack by a group of Klingon warships. And so Captain Garrett, who's the captain of the Enterprise C, is killed. And so now Tasha has to step in. And Tasha wasn't originally going to go back. I did the summary wrong, Doctor. Great. But now she steps in.
Well, you backtracked a little. You got
right.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
we then decide. But regardless,
Castillo takes over.
Tasha goes with him.
Right.
Timey wimey, wibbly wobbly. Everything's restored. And there's a different memory that Guinan retains of Tasha's death, her more heroic death. So
And then the episode ends with Guinan asking, of all, interestingly enough, of all people, LaForge, tell me about Tasha Yar.
Right.
And that's, I think, is the last line
of the episode
uttered in the episode. Yeah.
All right. So now that we got through our summary, let's just talk about it. This is one of my favorite all-time episodes.
Let me just get right to the rating. This is a 10, by the way.
Yes, this episode's a 10. No,
this is a 10.
No waiting till the end on this one.
Right. This is a
so
10,
what
10.5 possibly.
What is it about this? What do you love about this episode? Why is it such a great episode?
I alluded to in an off-camera conversation with you earlier in the week that this is the first episode that really rewards longtime viewers of not only Next Generation but just Star Trek in general. I think up until now, for the most part, the episodes of Next Generation have been, self-contained. You have small connectivity between the episodes, lines of connectivity. But overall, if you started, whether you started with the first episode of Star Trek, Encounter at Farpoint, or you started with the 5th episode of the 2nd season or whatever, you can pretty much catch up fairly easily, and there's nothing too challenging for you moving forward. This episode, if you haven't been watching from episode 1, then I think you might be a little lost.
And actually, going back to your statement about rewarding longtime fans, the Enterprise C itself is a reward because it fills in kind of like the missing. It's and we get more of it with the Enterprise B, but like basically now with the Enterprise C, we had a little bit more of the story, the grander story,
the legacy
of the Enterprise and what happened between the A and the D.
Right. Because up until this point, we only knew about the original, the A, and then the D, but we knew nothing of
the B and the C. And of course, we get a wonderful introduction to the B in Generations.
Also with Guinan.
Also with Guinan, it's true. Another Guinan-centric experience there. But yeah, it's a really... Is Guinan a Time Lord, Doctor?
Oh, wow. We're just getting right to it, aren't we? Yeah. Boom.
Yeah, because, like, there's a lot of weird stuff going on with Guinan and her penchant for fancy dress. She seems to be impervious to changes in temporal, in the temporal landscape.
Absolutely. Which is something that on Doctor Who... Now, okay, this episode of Starfleet Boy will be only rewarding if you're a fan of Doctor Who and Star Trek,
which I hope many of you are.
I hope some of you are. Yes, certainly. I think the best example of it would be City of Death, where we see both the Fourth Doctor and Romana aware of tremors in the time stream. I mean, the Doctor is clearly able to navigate, okay, what should be happening and what should not be happening wherever he's, whatever planet he's on and whatever changes are going about. So Guinan, whom we're seeing right here on the screen, certainly demonstrates aspects of a time-sensitive race such as the Time Lords. Now, of course, her race is the El-Allurians.
The Allurians, yeah.
The Allurians.
It's, I think, El-Orians. It's like
El-Orians? Okay. Yeah. Now, is everyone in her race as time-sensitive as she is? That's a good question. The only other example of a member of her race whom we have seen is, of course, Soren, whom we've had interactions with, really. Didn't really get a very good sense of him being as let's say gifted to the changes in the time stream or whatever.
Right. Right.
So it's difficult to say, but certainly on
But
Next Generation.
Soren's obsessed with the Nexus, and I think that's perhaps we don't really get to know Soren as well as Guinan. I think
Right, that's my point.
we're gonna have to assume
Just
that
based on Guinan that they're all like this. I mean,
there's
somebody
something
makes
to that.
the
Yeah.
somebody may at some point somebody describes her race as a race of listeners.
Right. I think doesn't she
Does
describe it
she
as that? I think
herself
she
describe
herself
her?
describes it that way. Yeah.
Okay, so obviously a race of listeners could. I mean, you could say if a race is the race like the Time Lords, where in theory they go around the universe
Well, they're a
at their
race.
best.
They're a
They're
race of
listening and
yeah,
observing, never, unless you're the Doctor or the Master, never interfering, but always watching and always listening.
observing. In other words, and
Observing
listening is a form of observation.
of
So it's a
observation,
very nice tie in there.
right? I think she's a very enigmatic character, and I really think that her presence in the episode really takes it to a great level, in the sense that you're very fascinated by this character, the way Whoopi Goldberg plays her. I mean, it's just she's so, and of course you as the audience know she's right, but to everybody else she might be appearing a bit nutty, right?
Right.
But she is so steadfast and so emphatic that that everything is different, and here we see the bridge, as you alluded in your summary. Many changes occur, and one of them is cosmetic changes, such as this.
I'm particularly fond of the raised captain's chair with the steps. What I love about this episode is they went all out. Like, they redesigned the uniforms a little bit, the bridge. I mean, it's just like, for example, something one might not notice, but the collar is closed all the way. So I don't know if you noticed that on the uniforms. And then they have that belt, the utility belt, which is pretty awesome too. I don't know about the one on the guy in the security back there. That one's a little not so awesome, but the one Picard's wearing I love it. I love the design. Look how dark the bridge is, and they have the blue, the blue kind of ambient lighting in the background, and just this scene here in particular is lit so beautifully. But anyways, I loved seeing this like alternate timeline, because they paid really, I feel like the production paid really close attention to, well, okay, what would it be like if in fact for the last like 60 some odd years the Federation was at war with the Klingons? How would technology have developed, et cetera, et cetera? And I would argue that this episode is actually a primer in our minds and in our consciousness to be able to accept what happens in the Kelvin Star Trek, because the same thing basically happens to those people. Spock says it, like, as soon as the Narada comes through the anomaly, and Spock as well, it changes the course of everything. And that's basically what the Enterprise C here is doing by being removed from its time and coming into the future. It's the opposite direction in this case. They're altering the way things would have occurred, and so it's just a brilliant thing. This is an alternate timeline. This is not the prime timeline. So this is our first hint. We could call it the Enterprise C timeline, or something like that. But this is our first hint of that idea of alternate timelines being created in Star Trek. Well, that's not true. It's not our first hint, but it's like a good example of it.
Well, this is something actually I want to ask you is, how would you distinguish this? What is the difference between what we see here in yesterday's Enterprise and, say, the Mirror universe?
I think this is that. This is the Next Generation's very original response or homage to Mirror Mirror.
But the Mirror Mirror continues. The Mirror Mirror is ongoing. It never ends.
Right. I mean, but the Next Gen never did a Mirror Mirror.
No, it did not.
Episode. Everything. Right. I think everyone else has done.
Everyone else has.
Right.
Voyager.
The
well, I don't know
series,
about Voyager.
I don't know about Voyager
Enterprise
either, and
Deep Space Nine
DS9 certainly did it. It's fascinating that they would do it on the non, on the non Enterprise show. But I mean, well, no, Enterprise did it. Sorry,
Enterprise did it. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think this is the Next Generation's original, and I have to say it's very original, and that's what's exciting about it, because you do think about Mirror Mirror, but you also think what's wonderful about this is that it's its own thing. Like, this is a whole different thing. And Yesterday's Enterprise, I think, is iconic because it shows us an alternate version of the Next Generation. Had the Next Generation been a war-based series, could you imagine? I mean, like, I don't know how they would have maintained the production to do space battles every, few episodes.
Well, Deep Space Nine.
Well, it's true.
The last 2 seasons must have been bankbusters, because there was basically every other episode was a space battle.
Bankbusters, I like that. But my point is that it's definitely the Next Generation's Mirror Mirror, and I would say that yes, but they nailed it because it's very original.
But here's my question: this timeline or this alternate reality? Well, let's just say it's an altered timeline.
Right, it's an alternate reality. It's another reality altogether. It's another universe.
Does it continue?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because when Tasha leaves, it goes on in another way. They still have to contend with these people.
But Tasha has a daughter that exists in our reality.
Well, okay, I guess we'll have to look at it.
That's where it gets very complicated.
Yeah,
because it does seem like it ends, because it's like what you said in the. I mean, it's a very difficult concept, right?
We visited the Mirror Universe, and it's the same in Enterprise, the same in TOS, the same in DS9. It's like this. There's a continuity. The universe continues.
I think they're actually two different things.
Right. Yeah. The answer here is we just don't ever see the story of how this. We never go back to this. We'll call it Mirror 2.
So this continues.
It continues. We just never see it again.
It's not eradicated. It's not like Back to the Future, where it existed because obviously Marty and Doc Brown remember it, but the timeline is cut off.
What's really happening is that Guinan is the one that needs to get back to. If you look at the episode, Guinan is displaced from her time. She's been somehow transported as a result of the anomaly. Her consciousness has gone to this universe.
So why doesn't Guinan simply try to get back to the other one? Why isn't the episode sort of saying no, we got to send them back so that this doesn't happen? Because that's the impression I get.
I think that's correct, but also it has to continue. Oh, maybe you're right. No, I don't know. I don't have a degree in temporal mechanics.
It's tricky.
So I can't.
I think there's a difference between the Mirror universe,
right,
and everything other scenarios that we see.
So to compare it to something else, in the DC universe, do you watch The Flash?
Yes, I've seen The Flash.
So there's Earth 2, Earth 3, Earth 4,
correct,
and so on, right?
That is an excellent analogy.
Okay, so the Mirror universe is that, like, it's Earth
like Earth 5, 2 and Earth 1.
Earth 5 or whatever, right?
Whatever, yeah.
So what is this then? Like, if that's not what this is.
Actually time, like what Guinan says, time has changed. It's like what you explained with the Kelvin universe.
Right.
It suddenly, everything changes. If somehow we could have sent the Narada back and had never come into the past, everything would have stayed the same.
Mm.
But nobody did, so it keeps going. Kelvin keeps going. I go back to the example of Doc Brown in Back to the Future 2, which I think is still the best example of explaining how it works. Is he's drawing the chalk line. He's like, if we don't fix it, then this 1985 will continue until it completely erases everything that we know as 1985, 86, 87, 88, da, 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 da. So that's why Guinan is so insistent. We've got to send this back. Otherwise, this timeline will overtake everything else, and it will just, and it'll keep going. And so, I mean, maybe there's an argument that the Kelvin universe needs to be obliterated.
Well, that's my idea. Did we talk about this on Starfleet Boy? That's a great way to get William Shatner. Spock screwed it up. Kirk has to fix it.
Oh, Spock didn't screw it up. No. Spock didn't screw it up. If anybody screwed it up, it was no. Maybe Geordi.
Oh yeah, because that's right.
There's or Data or something. But anyways, back to this episode. I equally share in your absolute joy in seeing the redesigns aboard the Enterprise and the look of the bridge, the darker lighting, even in Picard's, even in the ready room, everything's darker. You'll notice even in 10 Forward. You notice how 10 Forward seems much more chaotic.
Right. It's a mess hall instead. It's like,
right. It's not really a lounge. It's more like,
it's like, yeah, it's like totally.
Right. Is that the C?
This is the Enterprise C, the NCC 1701-C. And I love that it's a transitional design between the original series and the Next Generation, with more of the Next Generation being evident here. The designers, I love the Enterprise C. I don't think it's like, I think if they had more time, it would have developed a different way. But you can definitely see like the secondary hull echoes the A.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the circular shape of the saucer section also is back to that, because we get like the D has that oval kind of shape to it. But you have the nacelles that are kind of like the previous generation of the current nacelles. And a lot of it echoes the D, like what would later become the D. You could especially see it in kind of like the back view there. The D has the kind of pylons that are lower. They're more like the Excelsier's pylons, whereas the A has those diagonal kind of pylons.
Mm-hmm.
It's not my favorite design. I think I would place, of the Enterprises that we know, I would place the Enterprise C as the very least of my favorites. The A is the original, the refit, and the A are my favorite design, followed by the E.
Right.
Then I like the
absolutely.
B, and the D kind of the same. The B is just like an Excelsior modified, but I've always been fond of that design. And then the C would be the last one. Oh wait, I hate the Enterprise J. I absolutely thought it's the ugliest. It doesn't deserve the name Enterprise.
Oh my gosh! Wow.
Yeah, and the NX-01 is cool, but it's an NX series. It's not in the. I don't think.
I like the NX.
Yeah,
the
NX is cool, but the J is just like not. Yeah, I don't even know what they're doing.
The C, the 1701-C, is of course an ambassador class.
Mm-hmm.
It was launched in 2332, and it was launched under the command of the captain that we see in the episode, which is Rachel Garrett, and she was actually distinguished distinguished herself as a first officer on the USS Hood, according to. I'm getting all this information from this book, which I'll showcase here. This is the Enterprise guide. This is the manual of the Enterprise, and it's got a small section on the sea, which mostly what it does is it just acts as a summary to yesterday's Enterprise. It seems like there was not much history to this Enterprise aside from what we saw.
Mm-hmm.
So it was obviously one of the shortest serving Enterprises. It says here, when she was launched, she was one of the largest ships Starfleet had ever built at 526 meters. She was 3/4 as long as the Constitution-class Enterprise.
Wow.
And her deeper engineering hull gave her a significantly larger habitable volume than her immediate predecessor, the Excelsior-class Enterprise, the B. She had 36 stacks and a crew of 530. Yeah, it gets very technical here. But as for the design, you know what? I think the thing about the sea is that oh, wow, that's great. Look at that. Look at that comparison.
Finish your thought though, and we don't want to delve too deep into the realms of Trek Yards, which is a great YouTube channel that goes into really great detail about the ships of Star Trek. Which, if you haven't seen Trek Yards channel, you should go check it out. But
yeah, I do like the design of the sea. I think it's just a question of we just never really we didn't see her that much, you know.
Mm-hmm.
We only see her in this one episode, and I don't know if she gets. I don't know if she quite gets a beauty shot. You know, we're always talking about what's the beauty shot. You know, what's like when the Enterprise Z comes out of the nebula, and
for the D, it's that, you know, coming at the camera from
right, and
the bottom
the
there.
A obviously coming out of space dock.
Every shot, every shot of the A is gorgeous. There's no shot. You can't photograph that ship from any angle and not be wonderful. I'm sorry.
Right.
I've never seen.
Oh, is that the G down there? Is that the one you're referring to?
No. So this, I don't know where this is. I didn't. You know, we're obviously doing this live, so I just pulled this up. It was the first image I saw.
But that bottom one, is
that's the F and then the G, but I think it's the Enterprise J in Enterprise.
In Enterprise? Okay.
Yeah, it's like even further along or something. It's like way out there. But this F design and the G design here, I think, are not at all canon. And frankly, just from this profile view of them, I don't think they are worthy of the name Enterprise. I think.
Whoa, that's strong words.
No, I'm sorry. I think the Enterprise has to be a beautiful ship. But the reason I did pull this up though is because it does show how big the
sea is.
The sea is, and you can.
Yeah, it's almost as big as the
D.
As the D.
Mm-hmm.
Look at that.
Yeah, let me see if there's another. Here's another one. This one might be a little. Oh, this one shows a bunch of other.
Yeah, well, it's still quite large. This Ambassador class.
Right.
Look at that. Wow.
Let me try to make this as big as possible here for the audience.
I think she's a fine ship. I think she's a fine looking ship. I mean, you can see, like you said, that starting to transition, especially with the secondary hull. You know, the way it just curves upward, and you can see it being a cross between a stepping stone from the A to the D, for sure,
and definitely from the B. I mean, like you could see here,
and the B.
I don't know.
Yeah, the B.
You can even see
that curve. Yeah,
the the neck that connects the primary and secondary hull on the Excelsior has these panel like whatever, these grooves or whatever, and you can see that reflected in the design of the Ambassador class here as well. There's a lot. Yeah, I thought again, kudos to the production for Star Trek: The Next Generation for really, this is really high level, or not high level, really thoughtful design, and really thought, like, this is why Star Trek, this is one of the things that if it's done really well, you don't notice it. It's subconscious, but it helps to make the show even more real. And if it's done really poorly, it's always noticed. And Star Trek always, in Next Generation, DS9 has always done really well with that kind of thing. DS9 and Voyager. Voyager, we only really see the Voyager as an example of a Starfleet vessel, but
And what about the bridge for the sea?
Yeah, nice. Let's pull up a image of that. But again, nice echo or nod to the movies, yeah. And the uniforms too.
And the uniforms, which we love those uniforms.
That's my favorite uniform. If I could afford a nice reproduction of that, I'd be wearing it to every one of these discussions for sure, of the jacket.
Yeah. As you're trying to bring up an image there, I think like I was saying, this is really the first episode that I feel rewards long-time viewers of Star Trek. I think there's just something to make just about anybody who's a diehard Trekkie giddy with excitement over. I mean, I today's fandom world, everybody's obsessed with Easter eggs, right? And I mean, I just saw Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 today, and
I saw that too.
It's filled with Easter eggs galore for everybody that is aware of them. And certainly yesterday's Enterprise has tons of little details like that call back the looks of Starfleet vessels from the movies. It shows progression from the movies to the D. It adds to the legacy of the name Enterprise, certainly. Oh, here we go.
Yeah, so here we have, and again, you have the pre-LCARS displays back there that echo what
you saw in the movies,
the film era, and the uniforms. It's so nice to see those uniforms. They're missing the collar, the white, kind of ribbed collar, which I kind of minded, but it's okay. I mean, like, uniforms progress also, so that's one thing.
Now the helm stations look like the helm stations on Next Gen, but yet you have with the railing and, like you pointed out, the stations back there that could be the set of the Reliant,
right, or any. It's more, I feel like Star Trek 6, it definitely has that Star Trek 5 and 6 vibe to it too. But yeah.
I was thinking 2 and 3 just because of the darkness of the bridge set. And I think that was cool. And then getting to see another Enterprise captain. I mean, what are your thoughts on Captain Garrett?
Very cool. I would have liked to. It's sad that she like dies. They're all doomed. It's a doomed mission, but
it's a doomed mission indeed.
I think she's definitely. It's cool because we don't have a series. We're never gonna get an Enterprise C or Enterprise B series because, I don't know. Maybe we will, but it's unlikely that we'll get that. And I'd rather go, as you know, I'm very adamant about keep going.
Yeah, going forward, always forward.
But if we did have to go back instead of Discovery, I would love to go to this era. And I was actually kind of hoping when the early rumors about a Star Trek series came out, and Nicholas Meyer was involved. I was like, could they possibly be going to the film era? I mean, there's so much to explore that isn't explored. And actually, that is like a great time to go into, because you wouldn't mess with the Next Generation too much, but you definitely wouldn't mess with the original series. And
Right.
there's room for like technology, like especially if you did the Enterprise C, I would be more willing to accept a retcon of that technology than I am of. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, I feel like
Yeah.
Discovery is going to be so high production. They're not going to match. I doubt they're going to go out of their way to match the look and feel of the original series.
Probably not. Yeah. No,
Right.
I mean, certainly on Enterprise, the show, they did their damn best to, you know,
There were a lot of buttons. I
there
was
were a lot of
actually,
buttons.
I was actually
Yeah.
not displeased with it. The things like animated screens and stuff like that, I accepted, because I was like, well, we're in the year 2000 whatever, and we have that stuff. So Star Trek didn't predict everything that we would have. You know what I mean?
Right. Of
So
course.
considering that, I was like, it's okay for Enterprise to have these things. Like, and I thought when they remastered the original series, there are instances, if I'm not mistaken, where some of the background things are slightly animated and stuff like that, not taking away too much from the original production value. There's like a balance you have to take into mind, preserving the actual production of the show when you're remastering a series and updating it to be more believable as well, and i thought
Absolutely.
and I thought that's why the remastering of the original series was so good, because I think it does that. And but I don't know, we'll see. I mean, I really want to limit my speculation on Star Trek Discovery, because there is such a limited amount of information out there. Like,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
all we're
Yeah.
all just speculating, and so
Right.
I think it's
But
going to be worth it to see
back to
what
this episode.
happens. Yeah.
Certainly like I was saying, it's an episode that rewards longtime viewers.
Mhm.
Um, if you hadn't watched the first season of Next Generation, you wouldn't know who Tasha Yar was.
Right.
Tasha was a character who really goes unremarked. I mean, her sister will show up, but I guess she hasn't shown up yet in the series. But she's a character that, if you didn't watch the first
By the
13
way,
or
who plays her sister? She's a really great actress.
I don't remember. Yeah, she was a known actress of television at the time. But seeing Tasha was quite. I mean, I remember that was cool.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people, I think a lot of fans always felt cheated out of not having had more of Tasha on Next Generation, and I think our reviews of the first season echo that. And I think this was a great way to get her back. I think you gotta, that she had a great part in it, and I think Denise Crosby rose to the challenge very well of stepping back into the role of Tasha and making and like you said, having a more meaningful death.
Right, a
The
more
second time
meaningful.
around, a more
And she seeing, again, another delightful thing for fans, because seeing Tasha kind of, like a bittersweet moment there, where you can't help but think, like, of all the, it's just cool, it's like having a, I don't know how to, what the words escape me, but it was a bittersweet. There's a lot of emotion seeing her there, because the resolution is, you as the audience know, oh yeah, this is wrong. Like, they're not gonna keep going, like the show's not gonna keep going like this. There's going to be a resolution at the end, and you can't help but think, well, if everything's restored, that means Tasha's gone. So I love that the solution here, and guided by Guinan's insistence, is that she does do something different, this time, and it's a neat second chances kind of thing. That's what I was trying to
Yeah, because
say. It's
her
like,
death in Skin of Evil was so empty. It was so sudden and meaningless, really. I mean, and I think that was the nature. I mean, that's what they wanted. That was what they were trying to go for. Is that it was something quick, sudden, wasn't very heroic. It was just like boom, here today, gone tomorrow.
right.
And that was the intention. And then to have an opportunity to go back and give her a second death, so to speak, is something very unique.
The girl who dies, that would be her.
Yeah, I guess she has a Rory quality there. Yeah.
There is a Rory quality there, yeah. And so here she is. Great to see Denise Crosby. Different hairstyle, a little bit different Tasha, but it's a season 3 Tasha. If she had still been around,
a season 3 Tasha. If we had
this is what season 3 would have been like. It's also fascinating to think of what season 1 and season 2 of this Star Trek would have been like. Like up until this point, like what happened. It's kind of a cool.
Well, it's worth pointing out. Obviously, Worf is not there.
Right.
That's one of the big changes.
Yeah, that's huge. Yeah.
You always, it's like, oh wait, Worf is not there, and it's her Tasha's relationship with Castillo, I think is one of the highlights of the episode, and she was very reserved and kind of no nonsense when she was there, and you see a general softening of her, and even in the situations of the actual show, season 1, where obviously you weren't at war with the Klingons, she was a bit hard-edged, but here you see a general softening of her attitudes towards Castillo, and you see the seeds of something that could have become a romance if it had been allowed to continue and flourish between those two, which I think is it's nice. It's a nice thing for the character. The other relationship that I think is worth noting, that comes to the fore in this episode, is of course the relationship between Picard and Guinan. We see a subtly different Picard. We see a war Picard. We see a Picard hardened by constant combat. And we see a Picard who, when Guinan comes to him and says that this is not right, I think you see a Picard that's a little harsher with her, but nonetheless, whatever connection they have is still very strong in this timeline, which I think is worth noting.
Right. It is
whatever
true.
bonds them across.
It seems to transcend.
It's happened. Regardless, that has not changed. And there are very few people that can just march into Picard's ready room and say, you need to do this, and you need to do it right now. And Guinan does not back down. Guinan is not someone who is unsure or questions herself. She is adamant. She is like, this is not right. And I find their exchange to be very interesting. We continue to their relationship. I think we were talking one night about how, now we're going back to Doctor Who. The character of River Song got ruined to a certain extent because Moffat just decided to explain everything about her. She was much more interesting when she was more enigmatic. And I think we made the comparison to Guinan. Look at Guinan. Guinan remains an enigma.
Right.
Now, 20 years after the show is over, and her last appearance was on Generations. No, actually Nemesis. But were really contribution of note was, of course, in Generations was the last one, and she continues to be the most enigmatic character
in in Star Trek.
in Star Trek Next Generation.
Right.
And it's because we don't know everything. We just get little hints, little little bits of information, just enough for you to understand that there's something there, but you don't quite know what it is. And I really find it fascinating, her relationship with Picard.
Yeah, and I think that's why she works so well. And this is something that I think there is a degree of maturity and intelligence in the showrunners who decide to have characters like this. Not everything has to be explained. Things can be left to the imagination. And if and I would argue that that is something that keeps the fire of a show alive, because look, 20 years, some odd years late, 30 years now almost later, we're still talking about it. It's like it's not just a moment that's passed. And how many series can have how many characters can have that kind of power over an audience or fans or whatnot. So, and Guinan, you see it all the time in the cosplay world. There's so many great Guinan.
Well, she's got so many great hats. Yeah. But I think Guinan is one of the. I think the fact that obviously, she wasn't in every episode. Whoopi Goldberg's schedule did not allow for that, and I think that was a plus in some ways. I think if we'd gotten too much of Guinan, the character may have spoiled a bit. Watching an episode like yesterday's Enterprise, you realize what a great character she is, but you can only have her sparingly.
Mm-hmm.
You can't overdo a character like that. And Goldberg's she nailed this performance almost from the get-go.
I know, it's great.
I mean, you realize how many times that she played it, and yet, I mean, what are her?
Well, everyone knows.
What is she comparing herself to? I mean, the rest of the cast, you could say, well, I think of Kirk, I think of McCoy. What is
Guinan's
Goldberg
totally
thinking of? Guinan's completely original. Guinan is.
That's an interesting thing. I bet there are interviews out there. I'd love to know, but I bet there's a lot of Whoopi Goldberg in Guinan, because I sometimes, is it called The View?
I don't know.
I sometimes watch it, and when I see Whoopi Goldberg get serious about an issue of politics or like something that requires her to not necessarily be a comedian, it's Guinan.
Really?
Yeah. So I wonder how much of Whoopi Goldberg there is in that of her non-entertainer side. So anyways, the great points all around. Interesting thing here about, you might already know this, the new timeline. In the novel Vulcan's Heart, they kind of explain what happens to Tasha and Castillo, and it's really tragic. Castillo, the 10 remaining surviving crew members of the Enterprise C are actually captured by the Romulans.
Right.
And Castillo's brutally murdered, and then Tasha becomes the concubine of one of the generals, and that's how Sela is born.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Well, that story is told, I believe, in Next Generation.
It is also told, but I don't remember how much of it. But we will get to that in, what is it, Redemption? No,
I think even before we get. No, I think we even get before. Wait, Redemption is the Klingon Civil War?
Is it?
We get to her story eventually, next season, I think.
It's gonna be Redemption, because hold on a second, I think that's the next one with Denise Crosby in it. Well, when we get there, we'll know.
Right, and we'll be there to talk about it. Yes.
We'll be there to talk about it.
Uh, for we were talking about the Enterprise C before. There's a novel called The Well of Souls, which is one of those Lost era books, and it deals with Garrett. It actually deals with Rachel Garrett before she was even aboard the Enterprise. It deals with no, it does no, it does deal with her aboard the Enterprise, I guess. It's either aboard the Enterprise or aboard the ship she was on before. Actually, I have to confess, I haven't read it, so I'm not sure. But it may be one of the earliest adventures of the Enterprise C, and I think the actors that they got to portray Castillo, especially, he's a very, very good actor, and Garrett. They stick in the mind. They're memorable.
They're
They're not
memorable
on screen for very long, and they're of course competing with the regular cast and of course Guinan. So for them to stand out,
because of them, it's a cool thing because it's like our introduction to the Enterprise C crew, and you want to know them. I at least wanted to know them. I did feel like, I wonder what they did before, like what were some of the other adventures, and what an interesting moment in Federation history, because we know that the events of peace with the Klingons get started in Star Trek VI, but we then learn that it actually takes a long time before it's truly solidified. And there's a lot of conflict, especially with, the Romulans are probably taking advantage. And you do get the impression of this with Romulan Ambassador Nonklus being
Star Trek VI.
Star Trek VI and being involved and kind of like with the conspirators, so the Romulans want to keep it destabilized as much as possible. And this event, the Enterprise C aiding Klingons in a battle against the Romulans, is what kind of, pushes the pendulum, so to speak, or causes the pendulum to swing the other way, where the Klingons are now like, all right, maybe the Federation are in fact our allies and are interested in peace. And then I'm sure obviously, and we see that because removing the Enterprise C from her time creates an alternate timeline in which it's just a bitter war, between the Federation and the Klingons. Very fascinating, and the Romulans on top of that. So
and I will say that the crew of the Enterprise. Really, we only got to know two, Garrett and Castillo. Those two seem to make more of an impression, or rather, make a better impression on me than the B. The captain on the B is a bit of a letdown, to say the least.
Okay, come on, poor Captain Harriman. You have the launch of your ship, and the delegation that comes aboard is the great Captain Kirk. I would be shitting my pants if I had to deal with that too. So I don't think it's fair. But does he go on? Like, do we get more?
Yeah, of course he goes on. Yeah, they all go on.
So I'm sure he becomes a great captain in his own right.
I don't know about that, but
you're right.
Maybe, but I'm not as interested as I was.
You're right. Rachel Garrett exudes confidence, and
she does. She really does. Yeah. The actress did a great job, and the guy who plays Castillo, who's done a lot of other stuff outside of Star Trek, also is great. And again, I think you really hit all of the high points of the show. Obviously, the production design was stellar in the showing the changes between one timeline and the other. I think all of the actors pretty much. Well, it was mostly Picard and Riker who demonstrated a slight shift, subtle shift in their character. Wesley and Data really didn't have much to do. Of course, we did see them in that timeline. But and of course, the star of the show is Goldberg as as Guinan.
Yeah, she's great.
Without a character, without her, the show would have sunk. And again, I say it's a reward. It's rewarding. It's a gutsy move. It's a gutsy move to do an episode like that, because it's really rewarding longtime fans. It's not, if you were to come across this episode,
we forgot that Riker dies just before the Enterprise burns.
Well, right. The implication is that they're all going to die.
That's right. So yeah, actually, that's what happened. Wait, that's our answer.
Can you say the line again? One of the best lines in all of Next Generation.
Let history never forget the name Enterprise. Isn't that what it is?
If there's ever a Picard moment,
that is a great moment.
That's one of the best. That is the full Picard right there.
So wait, but there's the answer. We forgot this in our complicated discussion about whether or not the timeline continues. Yes, it does continue sans the Enterprise, because the Enterprise D gets destroyed in that timeline.
So the
timeline continues, but it's not important to us because the D's gone. That's it. It's a reversal of fortunes, if you will, in a way, because by holding off the Klingon attack so that the Enterprise C can.
But wouldn't Guinan be alive? But wouldn't there be? But see, that's the thing.
Guinan's consciousness transcends that destruction, and so she can actually remember.
But why is she so insistent? Why doesn't she just accept, well, in this timeline I die, but I'm alive in the other?
Because to her it's more than it's an important. There's something else.
She can't survive in all the timelines.
Well, one could argue that the fate. So the anomaly has some other repercussions. I think Picard agreed to let Tasha go through because he knew that history recorded the Enterprise C as being destroyed. There was no way he could have known that she would survive. And not only would she survive, but it comes back to haunt them later on. And then Guinan is important. And Guinan's important later too, because she has to explain, if I'm not mistaken, how the hell that happened. How the hell did that happen?
Because she's the only one with a memory of both timelines.
And that's why she knows what the right thing is.
That's what I'm saying. I don't think the timeline continues. I think
it continues, but sans the Enterprise. It has to continue. It's an alternate timeline. Do you know what I mean? Like we just never go back to it because there's nothing interesting there.
But then what is it about? Okay, then there's always been a Guinan on that ship. Has that Guinan always said there's something wrong here? No. That Guinan would have just been part of the timeline. She would not have had any reference to to what we see every week.
She didn't know, because there's two memories that she has, and she says it in the episode. She says, I know that this is right, but I also know that this, you know what I mean? Like she knows, I know how
she didn't say it's right. She just
but she knows that this is real, but that this is, in that argument with Picard, it's a little complicated.
I think the timeline is eradicated.
I don't know. I think it's. I'm gonna go back. I'm gonna backpedal on my agreement and
folks,
say that
comment below.
Yeah, we'd love to know. Do you think the yesterday's Enterprise timeline is eradicated, or is it just that it's not important because the Enterprise D is destroyed? So essentially, that's my argument.
See, this is why it's a 10, man. This is why this episode's a 10.
This is why, because it's a very there's a lot of
There's a lot of meat to this episode to discuss. I love this episode.
So what does the book say about it?
Oh God, the book. I forgot about the book. The book. You would think I would mark the page with some kind of bookmark, knowing. All right,
attention all hands. As you know, we could outrun the Klingon vessel, but we must protect the Enterprise C until she enters the temporal rift. and we must be successful. And we must succeed. Let's make sure that history never forgets the name Enterprise. Picard.
Interesting.
That's the whole line.
Excellently delivered. This is interesting. The episode is directed by David Carson, who's one of the best directors of
Right,
Star Trek.
directs the Generations, right? No.
Right. The story has many is credited to many people. Ira Stephen Bear, Richard Manning, Hans Bilmer, Ronald D. Moore, Trent Christopher, and Eric Stillwell.
It would take that many people to come up with such a great episode, though. Like, so I can see that.
Well, it says, in spite of the multitude of writing credits, which suggests a patched together episode, the show is continually cited as one of the most popular and most powerful. Apparently, the staff didn't think that it was going to work because it was written by committee and rushed. Wow, rushed in just 3 days. My gosh.
That's amazing.
This was necessary because Whoopi Goldberg and Denise Crosby's schedules made them unavailable during the original time that they were going to film. So they had to rush this episode. Yeah, it says most of the writers are not happy with the script. They thought it was going to be horrible because they didn't because they didn't like having to do it in 3 days, basically.
That's amazing. It's unbelievable to me that such a great episode. But
the idea actually began as apparently the initial idea was just that the Enterprise C comes forward in time, and the decision was whether or not Picard would reveal their fate to them before sending them back.
Oh, okay. Did you know that? So they show Riker's death, but they didn't film this. But they were originally going to have Wesley be decapitated. That's awfully cruel. And Data electrocuted was part of the gruesome ending of the Enterprise D.
My gosh, really?
That's what Memory Alpha says on its production notes.
Huh.
So
yeah, apparently. Wow. Well, you know what? There is a lot
of notes on this.
A lot of notes. I just recommend, ladies and gentlemen, buy the book.
It's out of print. Although I think you can get it from Larry Amazon. Yeah, he has an Amazon store. I think you can get it there.
There's a lot of stuff here. I will say that it says here that there was a rewrite. Apparently, it was Michael Piller who sharpened Guinan's role in the incident, and Ronald Moore contributed the Yar Castillo romance. Moore also stated that time constraints cut his own plans for a longer, bloodier ending for the alternate Enterprise D, in which Data was electrocuted and Wesley's head blown off, as you just alluded to.
That reminds me, the music was so good in this episode too.
They mentioned Dr. Silar.
Oh, they did.
They call her.
That's right. You're right.
Right. She's paged. As is Lieutenant Barrett, a homage to Gene Roddenberry's wife, Majel Barrett.
Oh, interesting. That reminds me, when we get to our Star Trek 4 discussion, Dr. Ben Dover is summoned on the... You never noticed that, did you?
No.
It's on the pager. It's paging Dr. Ben Dover.
Really?
Yeah.
I never knew that. Wow. Yeah, there's a lot here. This is one of the reasons to get this book is for all the information that's in here, which if I may plug that book, and at the time there was a magazine called Cinema Fantastic, or Cinema, I forget what it was called, but
Cinetastic? No, I don't remember, but I know what you're talking about.
That one, remember? And of course, Starlog. They would have so much great info about these episodes.
And the official Star Trek magazine, which, by the way,
I never really read Star. I never read it.
I'm going to step away for a second.
Okay, all right.
But keep talking.
Okay, but you know, there's a lot of great little tidbits in material that's out of print, like that book, and it's worth tracking down. Emma in Chicago got me some magazines that well, I'll just say this. It was one day I was riding in a train. I was reading a magazine from
so this is I think it only comes out like I think it's only 4 times a year, but it's the official Star Trek magazine.
Oh yes, it is still in print. It's like volume 3 already. Yeah.
Whoa. My mic just fell. Yowzers.
It is worth tracking down these magazines, especially the older ones. You got some great materials in there.
I think reading magazines is still great. I mean, I know there's digital versions of everything, but there's something nice about
there certainly is.
About reading it, yeah.
So, well, we've already rated it. It's a 10.
I know, it's a 10. This episode's definitely a 10. Anything else? I guess there's a lot, about this episode, but really, I think
we covered everything. I mean,
yeah.
The performances.
We really love this episode. We'd love to hear what you, audience, think of this episode. You can write to us at starfleetboy@gmail.com. Doctor, do you have a Twitter or anything like that?
No.
You want to write to the doctor, send me an email and I'll forward it to him. I don't know if you want. You can also comment below on our YouTube. And we want to thank everyone who has been commenting and is engaged with the show. We really appreciate the comments because we're definitely not always, fully
versed in
the minutia and the details, and so we really love it when we find out something we didn't know, or even when we were wrong and we're proven wrong. So it's always a great thing. So
one thing I will mention, maybe it's worth mentioning, maybe it's not, but when I was recently in Chicago, I was watching is it HTTV or HITV, Heroes and Icons?
Oh, I don't know what that is.
It's not MeTV, but it's something H something. And they have basically this block where they start showing the original Star Trek and Next Generation and then Deep Space Nine and then Voyager and then Enterprise. That's the evening.
Wow.
Right. And I've noticed that the Next Generation is pretty much
aligned with us.
It's somewhat aligned with us.
You told me
I think we are maybe. See, that's the thing. We might be perfectly aligned with it because obviously we're doing these way ahead of time. So to me, they're slightly off. But I think that by the time you post them, I think they're kind of aligned.
Oh, hopefully,
yeah. So I think that there are probably people who are watching Next Generation on that, and then maybe tuning into our show. So I think that's cool.
Yeah, if that's the case, we'd love to know as well. Yeah. But I think that was it. That's it. Another great discussion with you, Doctor. I really appreciate you joining me today, and
I'm happy for you to have me here. Live long and prosper.
Live long and prosper.